Salvation means being rescued from the world.
Salvation is escaping from somewhere. It is to escape from the world of suffering and vanity. Can one in the grave feel this escaping? The one in the grave cannot feel that he has been rescued. Only living person whose spirit is alive can feel that he has been rescued. If living person does not feel that he has been rescued from the world, then he is not being saved. The world is a place that pursues height and fulfillment, and everyone lives for the sake of height and fulfillment. There, people live feeling both pain and pleasure. However, when it's time to end their life, everyone realizes that life passes in an instant and is futile and then disappears. Those who vanish like that, or all those who live the same way and meet their death with worries, regrets, and disappointments, are people who have not been saved. God gave us the Bible for the purpose of saving people. And that salvation is for a living person to feel to have been rescued from the world through the word of the Bible like that. The person who has been rescued from the world has no regret, disappointment, or worry in his heart for things that belong to the world. All the fleeting forms that cannot be eternal. This rest is exactly the rest mentioned in the Bible. But this is not the end. This is because to have a realization is not to mean it is applied immediately. This is because even the person who has realized still has his body with the instinct of greed. That is why Peter said his days of living are like the days of war. A person cannot maintain that state of rest, that is, the state of peace, through his own efforts. Even for a person who lives in the mountains, his instincts remain, so his heart has not left the world. Also, the state of no thought, no image, is the state of nothing, not the state of being rescued. That's why people cannot escape from the world through their own efforts. To be rescued, to be freed is to feel that I have been rescued when you confirm that it is over there and I am over here. That is the meaning of the words, "Put on your shoes" in the Bible. Just as Moses had to take off his shoes on holy ground, you should put on your shoes on unholy ground and be separated. Becoming the state of no thought, no image on unholy ground is not separation, but the complete disappearance of the self. Therefore, that is not salvation. Enlightenment is the state of understanding and escaping, but you cannot escape from the world just by understanding its principles. To escape, you must have in your heart the conviction of where you are going after escaping, and that place is definitely where you should go. Which is to be able to escape from the world while living in the world. Is the reason that you can't escape because you don't know the vanity of your life? No. You are unable to escape even though you know all about it. The law of the heart, the law of the Holy Spirit, which Jesus perfected, is the very book that records the way to be rescued from the world that you are unable to escape even though you know about it. Therefore, a person chosen by God puts the perfect law of the heart, the law of the Holy Spirit, which contains God's wisdom, in his heart and mind, walks the path of becoming an eternal being, a son of God, by fighting against his greed as finite being within his body.
The distinction between reason and irrationality.
Person has a function of thinking called mind, or eel, and has also what is called heart. The heart is called the spirit, and the mind is called the soul. The mind is a function of the brain. It allows person to exert the ability to logically argue what is right and wrong that he naturally knows in his heart. If a person does not have that thinking ability, he becomes in a state like a beast without a sense of himself. It is his mind that enables him to recognize himself as a sense of himself. God created human nature to be good and placed within it the thinking ability, in order for that nature to be recognized as an independent himself. However, that thinking ability can either corrupt what the conscience has judged as good or right, or it can generate the driving force to push forward with that judgment. Conversely, it also plays a role to argue to himself after changing something bad into something good in appearance. This is called self-justification. Himself-justification is to change what is not suitable to his heart into something right in appearance, and to argue it to himself, and to brainwash himself. That is what is called mind control. However, people did not use that thinking ability for good as their nature intended, and so they committed sin and became evil. People like the scent of flowers, which is not because they were taught to do so. It is the same with disliking the smell of feces. The heart that knows what is good, right, and correct and moves toward it, is a good heart, that is, a conscience. Everyone has the heart to move toward what is good. The mind is a function that plays a role like the terminal of the heart, taking the judgments of good and bad discerned by the conscience, making them logical, and enables the body to act rationally in the unfolding of circumstances. Reason is the tendency of the mind to follow in accordance with logical principles. The state in which the mind makes the judgment of a good heart. Everyone has a conscience. Logical in accordance with principles, and gains the driving force to go in the right direction, in the direction the heart wants, is what is called having reason. Irrationality is the mental tendency to act against the principles that the heart and mind have recognized. The cause of irrationality is relative thinking that seeks highness and fulfillment, which has already been brainwashed into people by the world. Everything the world makes people pursue is contrary to God's good nature. Relative thinking causes a competition, and the competition makes good creatures evil and prevents them from escaping from that evil. The self that people have formed is the self defined within relative thinking. The self based on ignorance, and the self built on the foundation of non-truth. Adam and Eve listened to the serpent's persuasion, deceived their consciences, and rationalized themselves. Cain, who received the law of the sacrifice for salvation, also committed sin through self-justification. Sin entered man because his mind corrupted the voice of his heart. That is why God said, "Everything that man thinks is only evil." Just before the event of Noah, Cain's heart knew that obedience was right. That is why he offered a sacrifice. However, he ultimately led to disobedience by mobilizing his own thinking ability during the process of offering the sacrifice. It is that people have used what is good for evil. A child does not know why his parents say he must not play in the street. It is a person's thought that it's a good place for riding a bicycle because a clean road stretches out ahead. The act of rationalizing his own thought as right is what his mind does. Eventually, the child who rides a bicycle into the street meets with an accident. That is the result of disobedience. When a person thinks, does it really make a difference whether the offering is with grain or with a sheep? The thought of the person like that is to produce disobedience through rationalizing himself. From birth, people grow up under the education that corrupts their judgments of what is good. That is why all people in the world have built a world of the law of the jungle where they cannot live without competing according to their animal instincts. We have lived in such a world, and we are still living in it today. Of course, there seem to be people with a healthy mind. Such people think and act according to a correct conscience. That is a sense of justice. However, when you break down what people call a sense of justice, you discover that its foundation was also created within the principles of the law of the jungle. That's why, the result of that sense of justice also ultimately ends in evil. People cannot know how to be a god. Therefore, they must unconditionally listen to the words of God, who is divine. Of course, God did not insist on unconditional from the beginning. God makes them live in the world and, after realizing its vanity, has provided a logical explanation through his words for questions such as, why is human life in vain? And, why does the world only make people suffer? Then he has presented the way for such people to obtain an uncorrupted good, and how to live in that good forever. And he has made them experience it and follow it. People are teaching self-realization as a basic requirement for happiness. However, because that is the realization of a non-truthful self, it can never achieve the goal of happiness. Therefore, a person with a strong ego, a person who is called successful in the world, can never turn toward the truth. That is what he is dying with, tearing off and eating his own arm. We have lived in the world and come to know the nature of the world, that is, its vanity. And we have searched for a way to escape from that vain things. God, who has seen that seeking heart, showed us the way, showed us that the way he presented logically by using our thinking ability was right. And also made our hearts feel that it was the right thing. And he has made us deny ourselves from the very first step of going on the path that began in that way. This is because we do not have the strength to go the path to the end without it. In other words, this is because we cannot withstand the brainwashing of the world. So, first, he has made us find the reason that our minds and hearts are aligned, and from then on he has fixed to our corrupted hearts that recognize goodness through his teaching. And he has made us go on our paths by showing us the validity of denying ourselves. In that process, we are being made into a rational state where our hearts and minds are aligned one by one. And each time that is made, we are going to escape from the things that cause the world's pains and worries, and we are going to go on our paths by offering the Passover sacrifice every day. To say that our spirits have come alive means that we have found the good nature that God has put within our hearts. When we have completely recovered our good natures and been in a state where we cannot use our minds for evil again, our appearances are like that of the good God. That is also the appearance of person who is growing into the Son of God, the good creature of God, because of God. Someone who knows that feces are dirty will never try to touch them. In the same way, when we come to have a heart that does not go even near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we are going to live the days of heaven already from the earth with God forever. Psalm chapter 89. He shall cry unto me, Thou art my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. Also I will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven.
The foundation of ethical good is evil in the world of the strong prey on the weak.
The place where only the fittest can survive is in the animal kingdom, the world of the strong prey on the weak. Based on limited natural resources in that space, people live in a constant competition of taking and being taken from others. Lions have their ethical views, and rabbits have only their ethical views separately. In the same way, office workers have only their ethical views, and scholars have their ethical views in another manner. The ethical views of the United States are different from those of Uganda. The ethical views of the South Pole are different from those of the North Pole. A young lion brought a plump mother rabbit for the sick old lion. In the lion's own league, that young lion is a filial son. However, to the baby rabbits whose mother became its prey, that young lion is an enemy. Money is a medium that is used as a means to sell resources obtained by transforming natural capital and exchange them for resources I do not have. And in a capitalist society and the democratic society that recognizes free competition and private property, money is the key means of achieving the goals of height and fullness. The animal kingdom isn't the only world ruled by the law of the jungle. The world where people live is the same. The only difference is that while a lion is a lion from birth until death, in human society, even a rabbit can become a lion. However, regardless of whether a rabbit became a lion or was born a lion is simply a lion. Regardless of whether a person was once weak and became part of the establishment, or was originally part of the establishment, the person who has become part of the establishment has the mindset of those invested rights. Just as a rabbit has no choice but to remain a rabbit, if a person were also an animal incapable of thinking, with only instincts, then his life would be less arduous. However, since any person can transform from a rabbit into a lion, everyone lives with the dream of becoming a lion. And a lion, in its own way, is not satisfied with being just a lion and lives striving to become the king of all lions. Who engages in politics, who sets economic policies, and who becomes a social leader. It is all done by those who are full of greed, those who are quicker than anyone else in pursuing height and fullness. Also the mass media that creates trends, even the intellectual class that creates social norms. The business people who dominate the economy too, and the political administrators who establish order for the well-being of society as well, all of them in fact, are the same people who have won in competition. Those who win in competition engage in literature, practice art, and make the majority of others feel relative poverty, both materially and spiritually. Of course, everyone wants to become one of them. Whom are the laws they make for? Whom are the trends they create for, and whom are their economic policies for? They are never for the weak. It is merely a strategy for the lion to obtain a large number of rabbits for an easier hunt. You might think that the author sees the world too pessimistically. However, if we apply the fact that even the love people consider noble is, in fact, for their own benefits, as we have previously examined human nature, it becomes a matter of course without anything strange. There is a culture of donation. A person who has donated a lot is classified as a good person based on the standard of ethical goodness. The lion who has caught more rabbits than it needs and stored them in a freezer, one day, opens the storage and feeds many other lions and hyenas. Either because it can't handle the rotting rabbits or doesn't have enough time to eat all of them before dying. That donation may be good for the lions and hyenas, but it can never be good for the rabbits. In a competitive society of the survival of the fittest, a truth-based good cannot exist. There are always sad rabbits behind the joy of being promoted, earning money, or passing an exam in a competitive society. That is why ethical good can only stand on the foundation of evil. Then, is communism right? No. This is because communism provides a factor that allows people to fill another type of greed. They want to work less than others and to be paid the same. They want to make less effort than others and to be paid the same. That's why communism is the system that everyone goes down the path of ruin with their own respective greed. If neither democratic capitalism nor social communism can produce good, then there is no way to produce an unchanging, truthful good in this world. That is why human life is vanity, vanity, and vanity. Everything is in vain. Therefore, God presented a way for people to act truthful good. That is the method of pursuing lowering and emptying, which is in direct contrast to the way that the people of the world pursue height and fullness as they develop civilization. Some may have the question, if everyone pursues lowering and emptying, does that mean we will all starve to death? But rather, all people wish to live as evil people and then to pass away in the world, where truthful good does not exist with a heart to pursue height and fullness. And there is no way to stop that. And those evil people are also necessary evils that must exist in the world. The number of those who enter through the narrow gate is not large enough to cause such a concern. This can also be confirmed by the records exemplified in the Bible. In an entire generation, only one person, Noah and Abraham, remained, and everyone else went the way of evil. Even in the prophetic books, it said that only a number that a child could count would remain, and even in the time of Jesus, only Paul and a few legal experts remained. How many remained after Jesus is not confirmed, but it is possible to guess without needing to confirm. This is because there is not a single person in the world today who knows the law of the Holy Spirit revealed in the time of Jesus. Jesus said, "There is no one righteous, not even one," and it is the same today. Just as Jesus said that because there was no righteousness of God, which he said this is right in the hearts of the people under the Mosaic law like that. So today, in their hearts, those who call themselves Christians should have the law of the Holy Spirit that Jesus completed, which they would have held rightly if they had been established as priests. But no one has the actual ordinance, even if they speak of the term the law of the Holy Spirit with their mouths. However, there are the following words in the epistles. Romans chapter 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. 1 Peter chapter 2. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. Every Christian must directly offer themselves as a living sacrifice. To offer such a sacrifice, they must know the law of sacrifice. However, today, no one knows what that law of sacrifice is. The doctrines of all Christian denominations or church laws are not the law of sacrifice. Therefore, there are no priests. But it is clearly in the Bible.
The proof of the law of the Holy Spirit is in the part of the video entitled "Where is the Law of the Heart?" The law of the Holy Spirit of life that we can look into and think over?
God taught only those who follow his truthful good. Regarding the wicked, in Proverbs, the wicked become a ransom for the righteous. He also taught by saying, the king also eats from the field's produce, and that the king can take and eat what a farmer has grown without even touching it. While saying this, God told all the wicked who grow the produce to go the way of lowering and emptying and become a king. However, people who are accustomed to evil live believing that only height and fullness are the way to be able to become a king and a lion, so no one wants to go that way. Here, we need to broaden our perspective and think about this. We must think about the origin of the question, what is the basis that satisfies the people who work hard, develop based on natural resources, and pursue height and fullness through the medium of money? It is God who made those natural resources exist, and he created all things with his word. And that word became flesh to realize the public righteousness according to the principle of equity between God and man. And what was given as a method to escape again from that world, from the place outside of Eden, is the law of the Holy Spirit. And as a condition for following that presented method, he said, deny yourself and take up your cross, and the core of the law of the Holy Spirit, which is the method to practice it, is lowering and emptying. The one who created the world presented the method of original escape. The method that is not futile by following the principles based on the logic of what was made. If I say this, there may be some people who raise this objection. Then since the result of the path of lowering and emptying is that I just suffer my whole life, die without knowing what it means for my spirit to be alive, and can know it only after I die. If it's something I can't feel while I'm alive anyway, I would rather just live as an evil person and be done with it. That is a valid point. However, if you follow the law of the Holy Spirit, you will fully experience what it means for your spirit to be alive, what eternity is, and the rest that those who are weary and burdened can feel. Of course, the principles of the world mentioned earlier, such as the principles of the righteous and the wicked and the story of the king, are also mentioned in Proverbs, which is the law of the Holy Spirit. The 5 books centered on the law of the Holy Spirit: Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon contain the method for resembling God that the epistles speak of, as well as the method of gaining knowledge of God and the way to enter into the rest of God that is reached as the result. That is the perfect form of God's providence. And within it is the covenant that you will begin to live the days of heaven while you are alive on earth. I have raised this topic with the hope that you will think more deeply about the nature of human ethics and morals, which change with situations and time, and that you will turn toward the truth-based good. If you visit the Naver Cafe, Farmer's Wisdom, you can read explanations of the entire Bible without a sign-up process.